Great portraits do not always require super expensive lenses. I'm going to show you a couple of budget-friendly options that deliver a great look, but also won't break the bank. Why spend the money if you don't have to? Hi, if you're new to the channel, I'm Hayward. Welcome. These are lenses that I use all the time and rely on. They've been with me for almost 10 years. These are good lenses, they deliver a good look, and they're super affordable. Let's have a look. Okay, in this video, I'm going to compare three lenses. Well, I'm going to compare two lenses and use one as a reference. The three lenses are my favorite portrait lens, the 100mm f2.8 L lens. This is not one of the budget lenses I'm talking about. This is going to be the reference lens. It's gorgeous. It delivers a gorgeous look. 100mm f2.8 macro retails for $1,299. It's pretty expensive. It's not what I would call a budget lens. The other two lenses are the Canon 85mm f1.8 and the 50mm f1.4. The 85mm f1.8. This retails for $499. It delivers a wonderful look. It does not have image stabilization. The third lens is the Canon 50mm f1.4. This retails for $399. All these prices are current on the day of this video. A 50mm is not necessarily a portrait lens. It's a little wide for portraits, but if you get close enough to it, you can get a nice soft background. In fact, I did an entire video on this that I'll link at the end of this video on how I use it that way. The 85mm, however, really good portrait lens. It's a nice sweet spot in terms of the focal length. I think you'll like it. Again, same video, you will see how I use it for portraits. The goal of this video is to not say that these lenses are the same quality as that L lens. They're not. By the same token, they deliver a wonderful look, and the both of these lenses together are less than half the price. The look isn't that far behind. In fact, I'm going to show you some sample images where you kind of got to really look to see the difference. Top of the line lenses are wonderful, and they are definitely the highest quality option. But if you don't have the budget for them, are you out of luck? Hardly. Okay, so in order to do this, I've created three images that are not portraits. They're a shot of plants. It's a highly detailed image, and it has a lot of color in it. Portraits sometimes tend to smooth out lens differences. So I chose a non-portrait subject so we can kind of have a better look at this. I'm not a lens tester. This is how I look at things. I'm a lens user. I'm a professional photographer, okay? So I'm looking at what makes a difference in my images. I'm not looking at spec sheets to make or break my decisions. If it works for me, it works for me. I don't care what the spec sheets say or any other reviews. That's where I'm coming from. Okay, let's talk about the 100mm image. Okay, right off the bat, I can tell you that it's brighter, it transmits more light. That 100mm lens transmits more light. You can't argue that. Better coating, better optics, all of it. And it has a little more color saturation. Absolutely, a little more shadow detail. Again, I know that it has more blades in the iris, and so the bokeh will be a little more pretty. But as you'll see with the other images, it's not that far off. Certainly not at far less than half the price. So let's compare the 85mm image here to the 100. Straight out of the camera, as you see, the 85mm doesn't have the saturation or the brightness, and it has a little less shadow detail. I'm not even sure, in fact, that you're going to be able to tell the difference in this video because, I can see it in Lightroom. Right out the camera, I just load them in, and there's a difference, as expected, but not that much. Let me compare the straight out of the camera image for the 85 and the slightly exposure and color enhanced image. And when you put it side to side with the 100, they look darn close. Now, what we've done here is the 100 is at f2.8, the 85 is at f1.8. But the focal length difference should make that background bokeh be pretty similar, right? So we've got a little bit to work with there. Well, what about the 50 millimeter? Okay, let's look at the 50 millimeter image. Straight out the camera once again. If you compare it to the 100, it has a little less brightness and a little less saturation and a little less shadow detail. All to be expected, right? It is a less than $400 lens compared to a $1,300 lens, to be expected. However, not that much. And in fact, when you're looking at this video, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see all that difference. Once again, let's look at the 50 millimeter image out the camera and then slightly enhance to bump the exposure and the saturation just a touch. And then we can compare it with the 100 millimeter lens. Now, I had to use foot zoom. You know what foot zoom is, right? I had to physically move closer to get the framing approximately right. But, and that, of course, because of the focal length of the 50, you're not going to have as much bokeh. But the background in these images is pretty far away, so you still got quite a bit of bokeh. Because, once again, the 50 millimeter, while wider, is also f1.4. We're getting more and more open yet. So when you look at these three images, side to side, all three of these enhanced images, they come out pretty darn close. Again, I have to emphasize, pretty darn close compared to these two lenses are less than half the price of this L lens. Canon is not giving me a commission for saying this, and I'm not trying to sell these lenses, but I know a lot of you don't have the budget to just max out on L lenses for your whole camera bag. And I want to show you that you don't need to. You can still create great images. So what do you need? Does your work actually demand that super high quality L lens, the absolute top of the line? Are you having to occasionally print 50 and 60-inch portraits like I have to? Or are you doing commercial work where clients are demanding a super high resolution to run in media buys? If not, these are great options. You will save a ton of money and you're still going to make some really great images. I have had both of these lenses for nearly 10 years and I take care of my equipment pretty well. But they are real workhorses and they are still creating beautiful images that far down the line. For budget lenses, I don't know that you can ask much more than that. Sometimes when you look at equipment or you watch reviews or whatever, it's easy to get lost in the specs and forget the reality of using some of this gear. These lenses are pretty good. And I just want to make the case to you that this profession, or if it's a hobby for you, either way, for me it's a profession, it doesn't have to be about how much money you can spend. That is not necessarily going to make that much difference in your photography. In the case of these two lenses, 5 seconds in Lightroom, and boy, it becomes hard to tell. Okay, so we've looked at some non-portrait images with these lenses. Let me do a quick demonstration for you of a couple of images I shot for an earlier video. These are not production work portraits that I've shot. I shot them strictly for a video, and it was to show a bad situation in terms of background. But it does show you what these lenses can do in terms of bokeh. So one of these images was shot with the 85 at wide open, f1.8, and the other was shot with the 50 millimeter at f1.4. And with proper spacing, distancing, and exposure, they look pretty darn good. And if you're interested in how I did that, I have an earlier video. Once again, I will give you the link at the end of this video. It's sort of a tutorial on bokeh, but I use these two lenses as the tools to do it with. Now, I have some really good news for you. There's a lens that Canon has come out with that I'm really considering trading my 85 1.8 for. You have to have the mirrorless system. It's the RF mount lens. It's the RF replacement for this 85 millimeter lens. It's the RF 2.0 lens. And this lens, it is $100 more. However, it has image stabilization, and it's a macro lens. For $100, I don't think you're gonna beat that. For, I think it's $599 or $600, this is one fantastic lens, and it's turning my head because of that image stabilization and because of that macro capability. Those are two downsides of the lenses I've already talked about. They don't have stabilization, so I shoot portraits on tripod. You may not like to do that. That may not be your style. And if you're doing good shutter speeds, you can still handhold these lenses. They just don't have stabilization. So other weaknesses, right? Like I said earlier, they don't have as many blades in the iris inside, so the shape of the bokeh won't be quite as beautiful. That's an expensive feature, having more blades in the iris. Let's not appreciate that. The lenses aren't quite as well coated as the Canon L lenses, of course, so you're not going to get as nice of a light transmission and color saturation as you do. But as I've shown you, the difference in price versus the little tweak you can do to help them out a little in Lightroom, again, I think they're a totally viable option from a budget perspective, and they still make great images. To sum it up, if you don't have the budget or don't want to spend the money, I've given you two lenses that are phenomenal options to still create great images and save a ton of money in the process. If you are interested in how I use these lenses and how you can maximize the bokeh beauty of these lenses, I'm going to link that video. I don't know which side it's on. I really don't know. It's going to be linked at the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for visiting the channel. If you like what I'm doing, consider a like and a subscribe. I hope you will. I hope you'll have questions. I'd love to talk to you about these lenses and your photography. Until the next video, cheers.